Oh, my pitch is always high each time I try to do some public speaking. How can I control it? So my pitch is always high each time I try to do some public speaking. How do I control it? So if I just again show it here.
This is actually something that someone told me before when I was back in my schooling days, and even while I was very active back in 2009 and 2010 as an active Toastmaster member. For our viewers who have not heard of Toastmasters, Toastmasters International is a non-profit organization which allows individuals, most of the time, I think age 18 and above, if I recall correctly, you can join a club, you get the manual, and you're able to follow down. They call it pathways. You're able to follow, and you're also at the same time able to evaluate other speakers, you're able to take part in impromptu speeches as well. So yeah, I think one of the comments given by a fellow Toastmaster friend of mine was that when you're on stage and when you're using a certain microphone, your pitch sounds a little higher than your normal pitch. But that was something that I got. Interesting question.
Yeah, interesting. I would say, so I can start first. I would say that for me, the issue is actually the reverse. My pitch is actually naturally quite low. And with it comes its own set of challenges as well, which is one of it being that it makes your voice sound a bit more mumbly, for example. It doesn't sound more energetic. So I have to take a bit more extra effort to make it sound more energetic. But for a pitch that is high and you want to control it, and one aspect I would emphasize is to replicate or to listen to actually examples of some of the pitches that you're trying to aim for. That was something that I tried to do when I was trying to maybe change the way I sound. And they can go as simple as watching a video and just trying to understand what was the setting in which that pitch is being used. So for example, I start to understand that when people are smiling more or engaging in a very fun conversation, they tend to open up their mouth and the smile, and the pitch somehow always increases as well. So I tried to incorporate that in some of my speaking settings, just to experiment a bit in the low stakes settings, like a conversation, for example. So it was not like turning into an extreme, like, oh, hi everyone. Yeah, so it's not about turning it to the extreme, but just increasing it slightly just to hear how different it would sound. The second way I would say is to record yourself. I think this is the most uncomfortable part of or communications or public speaking training, which is to hear your own voice. So the first time I heard my own voice, I was so shocked because I didn't know that I sounded that deep. And it took quite a bit of a few listening, a few recordings, a lot of viewings of my previous speeches as well to just, again, understand how my voice actually appears. And at the same time, the more I get aware of what my voice sounds like, the easier it becomes to manage it on stage. The final point is not so much about formal training, but I do have received advice before that for specific vocal training. So back in when I was in a prosecutor, for example, we had an internal training before where there was actually a vocal trainer that came down. So a vocal trainer actually helps us to adjust the way we play around with our vocal cords, make ourselves sound a bit more energetic or sound a bit of more higher pitch as well. So I would say that if you really want to make sure that you have a more consistent, specialized approach to managing your pitch on stage, vocal training is another aspect that we can look into as well. This would be something that a vocal specialist would be able to actually understand how your vocal cords would work, and then they can tailor a specific approach for yourself as well. So yeah, I think that would be my 3 points.
Wow, cool. For me, when it comes to lowering my pitch, in fact, for me, I would say there are a few things that I thought of sharing. The first one is when it comes to I think we have a prompt that says you can try going live. Yeah, but no worries. We have it recorded, so our viewers will not miss a single thing. No worries. For me, I would say decreasing my pitch was a bit tough because I wasn't even yet aware of how high the pitch was. So earlier I shared that a Toastmaster friend of mine shared that my pitch was higher when I was on stage. And what I did was I went to see a speech therapist, not because of altering my pitch at that point in time, but it was because I was experiencing a lot of soreness of the throat after speaking for say 1 or 2 hours. So when I went to see my ENT specialist recommended me to see a speech therapist to see whether anatomically I could optimize the way I use my vocal cords. So it's more of managing the physiological aspect of the body. And what I then realized was over the session with the speech therapist, first I went through what we call knowing your range of your voice, the pitch specifically, before going to the speed and the volume. So knowing the range of the pitch, what she wanted me to do was to produce one single sound like E, like the E sound, and to produce it at different pitch levels, like E, 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 E. So it really brings me to knowing which are the limits, the top and the bottom limits, and where do I stand. She even wanted me to pretend I'm on stage and then give a speech. So that is what we call the performance pitch. And then the other one is how you would normally speak with your friend, perhaps. Because sometimes when we are on stage, it's not that we have to come up with a fake pitch or fake accent, but it's just that naturally the energy level is a little higher. So when the energy level is a little higher, you are forcing air out through with your diaphragm contraction. You're forcing air, a column of air out through in a certain way, and it might alter, say, the quality of the sound that comes up. So a more energetic display could also potentially place a bit of a strain on my vocal cord. So she did both observation. And of course, the one which I didn't realize at the end of the day was when I was in a more casual conversation, the pitch was a little lower, about just not very much lower, though. It was about 1 or 2 levels lower. And then when it goes to a performance level, it's just 1 or 2 levels higher. And she thought that what you could do is, one exercise at home is to try breathing through a straw. Breathing through a straw into a cup of water, or maybe a bottle of water or a cup of water with straw, and you try speaking through that. So when you try doing that, you are better able to be aware of where the vibrations take place, whether it's more towards this area or more towards the mouth. The idea is, what she shared with me, was to bring the vibrations and feel more here. So you get more of the resonance rather than putting a lot of strain trying to project right here. So that's one thing that I did. It wasn't so much to alter my pitch, but it was more towards protecting my vocal cords to prevent a lot more strain. So that's one. When it came to altering the pitch, then I found it very useful once I knew the sort of spectrum, what is the furthest I could go and what's the lowest I could go. I was then able to be just a little more aware. Like even when I speak now, I can just perhaps be a bit more aware, drop 1 or 2 instead of going too high. I always get feedback. The second advice is to get feedback from my audience. Is this pitch all right? And I remember the feeling. Now I'm fully aware of the range. Ask my audience, is this all right? And over the various speeches, I then alter accordingly. Most of the time, the audience feedback can be quite accurate. So they often share that this is appropriate stuff. So yeah, I did change accordingly. Fortunately for me, it wasn't like 4 or 5 levels different, because otherwise I would then be speaking the squeaky voice like this. I think that would be a bit weird. So yeah, altering this, get feedback from the audience, and if necessary, if you want to, you can feel free to see a speech therapist. A speech therapist will help you be a little bit more aware of the range. And thereafter, which range you want to be, the speech therapist also told me, you're the one in charge. You're the one to decide what range is comfortable for you. So always ask your audience, and if need be, feel free to seek a speech therapist. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Nice. Yeah, I've always also thought about even seeing a speech therapist myself as well, because it's quite interesting. So sometimes I see some of the ads on Facebook, and then you see this very suave guy who can speak in a very cool tone, and then he will switch his pitch, and then he becomes very hyper, very exciting. And I always thought that kind of control is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.